Shout out to Donald Trump, whose chaotic, reckless approach to global politics is finally pushing people in other countries to realize his ideas just don't work. Instead of sparking a worldwide conservative wave, his influence is doing the opposite. In 2025, Trump's shadow looms large, not just over the US, but around the world. Yet, as conservative leaders abroad try to ride the MAGA wave, they're finding it's more of a political riptide. Canada and Australia have both rejected Trump-style populists in favor of centre-left leaders. In Germany, the far-right AfD stumbled in the polls despite or due to high-profile meddling from Trump allies Elon Musk and Vance. It turns out that trying to copy Trump's playbook now that his policies are being felt worldwide is proving to be a major miscalculation. Is the world rejecting Trumpism in real time? Could this global backlash mark the beginning of a new political era? And if America no longer leads the democratic world, who will step up and take its place? Something is shifting among America's allies, and it's a big relief. For years, we've watched far-right movements inspired by Trump-style politics gain ground in Western democracies. These movements push a mix of nationalism and fake populism that's helped leaders like Trump rise in the US. In places like Hungary, we've even seen what this can lead to. Governments that slowly take control by weakening the opposition, controlling the media, and keeping power without needing to use much overt violence. A sort of soft authoritarian regime. But now it looks like that wave is starting to lose momentum. The far right isn't gaining ground like it used to. And it turns out people like to elect leaders who can string a sentence together. Parts of the American right have become obsessed with big ideas. Some dream of a Christian nationalist state/tech-driven utopia. But no matter which fantasy they're chasing, they're all united around one shared mission: dismantling anything that vaguely resembles democracy. To them, the enemy's obvious: the Constitution, the rule of law, social safety nets, basically anything that helps people and isn't a tax break for billionaires. They won the election, grabbed Congress, and are now full speed ahead on turning the US into their personal dystopia. It's a bleak and disturbing spectacle, one the entire world has been watching closely. Although Americans voted for Trump, signing up for what he was selling, I guess, the rest of us did not. But we've been forced to face the consequences anyway. Tariffs, Trump's utter mishandling of various wars, total disregard for the law, tough policies on migrants, attacks on women's rights, and his stance on climate action have seen voters outside America react with anger and self-protective patriotism. In Canada, conservative Pierre Poilievre, who was described by many as a sort of Donald Trump light, was expected to win the country's election when Justin Trudeau announced his resignation in January. But Trump's tariffs on Canadian products and his threat to the country's sovereignty turned the election into a kind of referendum on him. Pierre tried to pivot, distancing himself from Trump sort of late in the piece and vowing to put Canada first. But it was too late. Canadians had already seen the real-world effects of Trumpism and instead voted en masse for the Liberal Party's Mark Carney. He's never held a political office before becoming Prime Minister, but he's spent decades in finance, guiding governments through major global crisis. He can speak in full sentences, acknowledges his past mistakes, and to quote him, he understands how the world works. It's a refreshing approach compared to his closest neighbor, who can hardly speak for more than 1 minute without saying or doing something completely insane. Carney's campaign was heavy with anti-Trump sentiment, and in his victory speech, he acknowledged times have changed, and Canada's relationship with America will be different.
Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over.
Mark has spent the first week as Prime Minister pretty booked and busy, appearing on television and braving a meeting with President Trump himself. The contrast here is so stark. It's like watching an adult humor a toddler, but the toddler is like really weird and scary. Here's my personal highlights.
When you look at that beautiful formation when it's together, I'm a very artistic person. But when I looked at that beauty, I said, that's the way it was meant to be. Honestly, we give you essentially anyway, because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem. But I think, it's it would really be a wonderful marriage.
Carney was able to crack jokes, remain professional, even in this extremely tacky room filled with some of the worst and most stupid people on earth. He firmly stated, Canada is not for sale.
As you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale. It's not for sale, won't be for sale, ever.
It's so nice to just see somebody stand up to him, you know what I mean? Usually people go into that ugly little room and just get bullied, so this was quite nice. Not everyone in Canada wanted Carney, and the country is still facing division on internal issues like housing. But the mandate is clear. Stand up to Trump, protect Canada's sovereignty, and prepare for the worst. Over in Australia, there's been a similar flip. Australian voters have delivered a landslide win for the Labor Party, returning Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for a second term with a clear majority of seats. His opponent, Liberal National Coalition leader Peter Dutton, who was nicknamed Timu Trump by critics, seemed to have an advantage coming up to the election. Even though Dutton insisted he was his own person, he was accused of fueling culture wars and using Trump-like language to go after migrants and the media. He spent weeks trying to separate himself from the tariff-happy US president, but in the end, it wasn't enough to convince Australian voters that he was the right leader for such turbulent times. The 5-week campaign was mostly driven by cost of living issues, especially the rising cost of healthcare and housing. But as tariffs hit and global tensions rose, China even showed up in new warships to do a loop around Australia for some unknown reason. Foreign policy began to play a role too, with the big question being how the country should handle Donald Trump. Former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull told BBC NewsHour that Dutton ran a very Trumpian campaign and said that Trump's presence on the global stage shaped how voters viewed the Liberal national opposition. Labour, a centre-left party, saw support grow across the country. This is a rare achievement for a government in its second term. Albanese also made history as the first Prime Minister in more than 20 years to win back-to-back elections. Seriously, this is like unheard of. I don't know how much you'll know about Australian politics, but they roll each other constantly. It's like their favourite thing to do over there. They're fully obsessed with it. And he was called as the winner only an hour and a half after vote counting started. That's historical. The shift also echoes a trend seen in the country's last election of voters abandoning the two major parties, signalling a public yearning for a less divisive us versus them two-party based system. After his landslide victory, Anthony Albanese delivered an emotional tear-jerker of a speech, claiming Australia had chosen Australian values.
In this time of global uncertainty, Australians have chosen optimism and determination.
A clear denouncement of Trumpism. The actions of Trump and his army of freaks have consequences. The rest of the world sees people like Elon Musk and Vance as fools who have been given a dangerous amount of power. We don't want them. I doubt you want them either, but you know what I'm saying. Germany held its election a bit earlier before the full impact of Trump's aggressive economic moves and his clumsy handling of the Ukraine-Russia war had played out. But voters had already seen enough, especially with his hostility towards NATO. Germans also watched in disbelief as Trump allies like Vance and Elon Musk made wildly inappropriate moves by endorsing the AfD, a far-right neo-fascist party that had been gaining ground. The audacity to come into Germany and tell them to elect a far-right neo-fascist party is almost unthinkable. But that's what happened. In the end, the AfD fell short of expectations and the centre-right stayed in control. Germany's intelligence agency officially labelled the AfD as a far-right extremist organisation. In Germany, that is a serious designation. Given the country's history, it gives the government legal tools to closely monitor the group, including using surveillance. In a stunning display of obnoxious stupidity, Marco Rubio decided he had something to say about that. He posted on X, Germany just gave its spy agency new powers to surveil the opposition. That's not democracy, it's tyranny in disguise. What is truly extremist is not the popular AfD, which took second in the recent election, but rather the establishment's deadly open border immigration policies that the AfD opposes. Yeah, first of all, the hypocrisy of that, don't have time. But that is the Secretary of State for the United States of America. Germany has learned what happens when you allow a far-right group to run wild. Do you need us to run you through that one, Marco? Do you need a little bit of a flashcard reset on that one? So here we are, in a moment where the world is waking up from the fever dream of Trumpism. Country after country is deciding that maybe, just maybe, electing angry men with microphones and no grasp of global diplomacy isn't the best plan. The backlash has begun, not with riots or revolutions, but with ballots and quiet rejections of extremism. Whatever the answer is, the rest of the world isn't waiting around. They're moving on, with or without America. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe. We do 5 videos a week on everything happening all around the world, in the news, and right here on the internet. Bye!